Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I request you all to please be seated. We are going to be starting our event as soon as you get seated. The Prime Minister is here. We are waiting for you to take your seats. May I request everyone to please take their seats. Prime Minister Carney is here, and we will get started as soon as you get seated. Ladies and gentlemen, one last time, may I request you all to please take your seats. We're scheduled to start with the Prime Minister. May I request you all to please be seated. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here on a very special occasion. I'm Shireen Bhan, the Managing Editor of CNBC TV 18 in India, and it is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome a man who has pivoted many times during the course of his career. It's very rare to have somebody who's straddled one central bank. It's even rarer to have somebody who's straddled two central banks during the course of his career. Of course, someone who is as accustomed to the world of climate finance as he is to the world of central banking and Wall Street as well, and now, of course, leading Canada to its path of strategic autonomy. It is also important that Prime Minister Carney is here in India. This is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to India, the first bilateral visit in 8 years. And it would be interesting to hear what he has to say about the strategic reset between India and Canada and what that will mean in terms of the ambition of this partnership. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. Great to see you again, Shireen. Thank you all. Wow, what a great room. Thank you very much. It is a privilege, a true privilege to be here in Mumbai this evening. I'd like to thank everyone in this room for taking the time to share with me, and in particular, the Chief Minister, for being here, welcoming your delegation here. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Well, we had a good discussion beforehand, discussion over dinner. We take so much inspiration from what has happened in Maharashtra over the course of a number of years, but particularly over the course of the last decade. Many lessons about how to build infrastructure, how to build out, how to build clean, how to re-green. So I'm going to go through some remarks. I'm going to give a bit of context to how we see the world and what it means for Canada, what it means for Canada-India. But there have been obviously developments today, and I would like to make a few comments on those developments, and I will do so in both of Canada's official languages, beginning in French. So bear with me for a moment, please. En ce qui concerne la situation au Moyen-Orient, la position du Canada reste claire. La République islamique d'Iran est la principale source d'instabilité et de terreur au Moyen-Orient. Elle affiche l'une des pires bilans au monde en matière de droits de la personne et elle ne doit en aucun cas être autorisée à acquérir ou à mettre au point des armes nucléaires. Le Canada et ses partenaires internationaux ont demandé à plusieurs reprises au régime iranien de mettre fin à son programme nucléaire, notamment lors du sommet du G7 à Kananaskis et à l'occasion de la réimposition des sanctions par les Nations Unies en septembre dernier. Nous avons imposé des sanctions à plus de 250 entités iraniennes et inscrit le corps des gardiens de la révolution islamique sur la liste des entités terroristes. Et malgré les démarches diplomatiques, l'Iran n'a pas complètement démantelé son programme nucléaire, n'a pas cessé toutes ses activités d'enrichissement et n'a pas mis fin à son soutien aux groupes terroristes régionaux. Le Canada est solidaire du peuple iranien dans sa longue et courageuse lutte contre le régime oppressif de l'Iran. Et le Canada réaffirme le droit d'Israël de se défendre. Le Canada appuie les mesures prises par les États-Unis pour empêcher l'Iran de se doter d'une arme nucléaire et pour empêcher son régime de continuer à menacer la paix et la sécurité internationale. Et le gouvernement du Canada appelle à la protection de tous les civils dans ce conflit. So to translate, Canada's position on the developments in the Middle East remains clear. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the principal source of instability and terror throughout the Middle East. It has one of the world's worst human rights records and must never be allowed to obtain or develop nuclear weapons. Canada and our international partners have called consistently upon the Iranian regime to end its nuclear program, including at the G7 summit in Kananaskis and with the United Nations reimposition of sanctions this past September. We've sanctioned over 250 Iranian entities. We've listed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity. And despite numerous diplomatic efforts, Iran has neither fully dismantled its nuclear program, halted all enrichment activities, nor ended its support for regional terrorist proxy groups. Canada stands with the Iranian people in their long and courageous struggle against this oppressive regime, and we reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself. Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. And the Canadian government urges the protection of all civilians in this conflict going forward. So with that, I'd like to put in context where the world is, as I said before, where our relations are, where Canada is going. And let me start by observing again what an honor it is to be here and a pleasure to be at the Taj, a landmark that reflects the city's illustrious history and its resilience. My visit is the first bilateral visit by a Canadian Prime Minister in 8 years. This visit marks the end of a challenging period and, more importantly, the beginning of a new, more ambitious partnership between two confident and complementary nations. Thank you. Now, it does come during a more volatile period in the global economy. A more volatile era is emerging, and it's emerging in a process that we've described as a rupture, not a transition. And the fact is that over the past 2 decades, there's been a series of crises in finance, in health, in energy, and geopolitics that have laid bare collectively the risks of extreme global integration. And more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. And the multilateral institutions on which countries have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, that architecture of collective problem solving are all under threat. As a result of this, many countries are concluding that they must develop greater strategic autonomy. And that impulse is understandable. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. A country that cannot feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. But building true strategic economy requires diversification and partnership, not isolation. And it creates enormous opportunities for Canada and India to work together, at a minimum to limit risks, but really to increase prosperity and to build our collective sovereignty. Now, this room knows that the economic security and the prosperity of our countries depends on what we would call a strategic stack that is much longer than conventional energy, food, and defense, as important as they are. Today, sovereignty requires reliable access to space-based communications and semiconductors. It requires unhindered access to AI, critical minerals, clean energy technologies, and vaccines. It requires digital sovereignty, beginning with a sovereign cloud and extending through the intelligence infrastructure stack. Now, Canada was amongst the first to understand how the global system was changing and to fundamentally shift our strategic posture as a result. We now know that our old, admittedly comfortable assumptions that our geography and our alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, we know those assumptions are no longer valid. And so we're pursuing a new approach, which we call value-based realism, being both principled and pragmatic. Principled in our commitments to fundamental values, respect for human rights, and our responsibility for future generations. But pragmatic in recognizing that progress is often incremental, that interests of nations can diverge, and that not every partner will share all of our values. We're actively taking on the world as it is, not passively waiting for a world that we wish to be. And we are no longer just relying on the strength of our values, but also on the value of our strength. And that strength, as it does here, that strength starts at home. Since my government took office, we have cut taxes on incomes, capital gains, and business investment. As one example, we put in place what we call a super deduction, a broad-based 100% tax write-off for everything from manufacturing assets to intelligence infrastructure, R&D, clean energy, and EVs. And on top of this, we have instituted investment tax credits for across the clean electricity chain, from critical minerals through to storage. These measures reduce our marginal effective tax rate for investment to just 13%. Let me translate that in relative terms. That's 4.5 percentage points below the US level, and it is and we're fast-tracking $1 trillion of investment in energy, AI, critical minerals, new trade corridors, and beyond. Just last month, we launched our new Defense Industrial Agency. Defense Industrial Strategy, I should say. And that's a bold plan that will catalyze $500 billion of investment over the course of the next decade. We are doubling government investment in defense-related R&D to develop next-generation capabilities in AI, in quantum, robotics, and autonomous systems. Overall, this strategy builds our sovereignty in the fullest sense. In other words, our ability to act independently in a more dangerous and divided world. And to repeat, we know that strategic autonomy does not mean isolation. It means being strong enough to be a partner of choice. And India is one of our natural partners. And to put those partnerships in context, we're rapidly diversifying abroad. We have agreed a comprehensive strategic partnership with the European Union, including becoming the only non-EU country to join SAFE, their defense procurement arrangement. We've signed 20 trade and security deals on 4 continents in just 8 months, including with China, Indonesia, the UAE, and others. We're negotiating free trade pacts with ASEAN, Thailand, Philippines, Mercosur, and most importantly, with all due respect, most importantly, with India. And beyond the threats and away from the headlines, we retain the best trade deal with the United States. Our average tariff rate is less than 5%, and more than 85% of our trade enters the United States tariff-free. In addition, to help solve global problems as the rules-based order is under threat, we're pursuing variable geometry. In other words, building different coalitions for different issues based on common values and interests. On trade, we're championing efforts to build a bridge between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, something that would create a trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. On critical minerals, we're forming buyers' clubs so the world can diversify away from concentrated supply. On AI, we're cooperating with like-minded democracies to ensure that we will not ultimately be forced to choose between hegemons and hyperscalers. Canada is at the table. Canada is at those tables because we have what the world wants. We're an energy superpower. We hold vast reserves of critical minerals. We have the most educated population in the world. Our pension funds are some of the world's largest, most sophisticated investors. And our government, AAA, has immense fiscal capacity to act decisively. And if you don't believe that, the Minister of Finance will give you an hour-long tutorial after this. Fundamentally, we have the values to which many others aspire. We're a pluralistic society that works, and we are a stable, reliable partner in a world that's anything but. A partner that builds and values relationships for the long term. And we're here this week because Canada and India are natural partners. That partnership begins with our people. 2 million Canadians trace their roots to India, including leaders in business, science, and government. Tens of thousands of people travel between our countries every year to visit families and friends. There's more than 1,000 Canadian companies already doing business here in India. 400,000 talented Indians study in Canada. That is double the number that study in the United States. It is 4 times the number that study in the United Kingdom. And just as Indian students come to study at Canadian universities come to India. Today it was my pleasure to join Universities Canada, representing over 20 of our top institutions, in announcing the signing of 13 new agreements for research, student exchanges, hybrid campuses, AI centers of excellence. And I salute the presidents of the University of Toronto, McGill, Dalhousie, oh my Lord, UBC. How can I forget UBC? This is an enormous opportunity for both our countries. It already has been an enormous benefit for both our countries, but it's one that is about to move to the next level. A few other things on our connections. Two-way investments between our countries in fixed investment, $100 billion. Two-way trade exceeding $30 billion a year. But the reality is, on the economic side, that level of activity is nowhere near our potential, especially as both our countries embark on ambitious transformations. We should aim much higher, and we are aiming much higher, and to be more strategic in our partnership. And that's why, immediately after my election last year, our government set out to renew our relationship with India. I invited Prime Minister Modi to the G7 summit in Canada. And when he came a few weeks later, we agreed to re-engage across security, energy, and technology. A few months later, at the G20 summit in Johannesburg, Prime Minister Modi and I launched a landmark partnership with Australia on critical minerals and technology. And we're now negotiating a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with the intention to double two-way trade by 2030. Our goal, to be clear, is to sign that agreement by the end of this year. Our foreign ministers have met 5 times in 5 months. Minister Anand is here this evening. Our ministers of environment, our Minister of Trade, Minister of AI have all led delegations to India. I'm joined by them, the Minister of Finance, the head of our civil service, and the premiers of New Brunswick and Saskatchewan, to give a sense of the breadth and depth of this relationship and the scale of the opportunities. And Premier Moe and Premier Holt, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for coming to this. Our visit is focused on the core areas where we can work together to create that greater sovereignty, greater choice, and greater prosperity for our people. And that naturally begins with food and energy, given our places as Canada's position as a food and energy superpower. I'll give a few examples. LNG. We intend to increase our export capacity to Asia by 50 million tons in the coming years. It extends to nuclear cooperation, from being the most reliable long-term supplier of uranium to building large-scale and SMR reactors. We can also be India's strategic partner in critical minerals and metals for your manufacturing, for your clean tech, and for your nuclear industries. And in the other respect, India can help us to double our grid with clean power by 2040. And finally, India's leadership in AI and the digital economy aligns well with our mission to develop and commercialize those technologies, as well as quantum, and, as I said earlier, to deepen our defense innovation. My friends, Canada is clear-eyed about the world as it is, and we are equally determined to forge a new path in it. We are a confident and ambitious nation, and that confidence, that ambition, brings us here to India, to lay and build on the foundations that have been laid by tens of millions of citizens in both our nations, to work together to create a more resilient, a more prosperous, and a more just future for our peoples. As communities in Canada and India mark Holi in just a few days, our bilateral relationship is also entering a new chapter, embodying the festival's vibrancy and its values of renewal and opportunity. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for being part of this renewal. I look forward to the discussion, your questions, and further discussion. Thank you very much.
All right, so there you have it. Leave your comments, your thoughts, your opinions, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Have a good morning. We'll be back. Keep your eyes open for that.